Welcome to another session of Scrintal Users Workflow. Today, we will welcome Dr. Dan Allosso. He's an expert in his field and he's known for his unique approach to teaching and research. He is also a known YouTube creator, and he has a YouTube channel called History for Today. There he shares his insights, expertise, and experiences with his audience. And during the session, Dan will share his workflow in Scrintal and demonstrate how he uses the app to streamline his research, note-taking, writing, and teaching. Let's learn from his experience and insights. All right. Thank you very much, Dan, for joining me today. I'm super excited to have the opportunity to get to know you a little bit better and also see how you have been using Scrintal since you joined us, I believe, a couple of months ago.
Yeah. It was. I have been really enjoying it. I think it has kind of checked all of the boxes in my wish list. So that has been a lot of fun.
That's great. But first of all, perhaps we can start with a little introduction. You can let us actually all know who you are, what you do.
Sure. I teach history at Bemidji State University, which is a small regional university in northern Minnesota. So I teach mostly U.S. history, some world. I kind of focus on decolonization in kind of the non-European world, and environmental history. So, and I have several projects that I'm kind of constantly working on. So this is one of the things that kind of attracted me to Scrintal. I have I also I have a blog and a YouTube channel. I really kind of like the idea, and I've been very attracted to the idea of kind of doing history for the general public. I haven't been a historian all my life. I had a career actually in high tech for about 20 years. And then when I retired, I went back to grad school and decided I wanted to be a historian and research and write things. So that has been kind of my process. So even though I'm really old, I'm actually also kind of at the beginning of my career. I finished my dissertation in 2017 and got it published. It became a book for the Yale University Press in 2020. So really, I'm kind of at the early stages. I've been teaching here for about 5 years.
That's great. Yeah, and so you joined Scrintal some months ago, I believe, when we launched our early access plan, and I was wondering what brought you to ask. Sorry.
Initially, and I heard about it actually. One of the participants in my book club, I run a kind of a book club where we meet on Zoom and read some sort of personal knowledge management related texts. Like we read Sonke Aaron's book and we read Scott Shepard's book, and I actually wrote a little book that we discussed as well. And then other times sort of history or kind of social affairs sort of things. And in that context, one of the participants put a link to your early access program up in our community notes, and I followed it, and I thought, this is exactly what I'm looking for, and particularly because when I was doing my dissertation, which began about 2012, and I, as I said, I finished in 2017, I was collecting notes in really in Tinderbox. Which was which still exists as an app that Eastman still, I think, makes, and it was what I found with that was that it was useful, but there was an incredibly steep learning curve,
Okay.
and I wanted it, and I liked the fact that it was visual, and I would make, I would actually make little cards for each. And I was reading, actually at the time, I was reading thousands and thousands of handwritten personal letters from the 19th century. And so I was transcribing them and writing notes about them and then writing my comments. And so from there, my process was I went from Tinderbox, from this big database that I had sort of visually arranged, and then I would color code them based on how I was going to use them. And then I would move them over to Scrivener.
Mm-hmm.
And I would use that little, emulation of the pegboard, the cork board with the note cards in Scrivener, and that was sort of my process. More recently, I have been on my, partially for my YouTube channel, just partially for my interest, I've been pursuing different knowledge management tools, and I was really I wasn't an early adopter of Rome Research, but I was around when they were doing their first few book clubs, and that actually gave me my book club idea. And then I migrated to Obsidian, because I thought I didn't want to be quite as atomic, and I didn't want to do quite as much coding. And so also I really hated the graph in Rome. So I thought that the bubble graph in Obsidian was much more visually stimulating. What I found in the long run was, although it was fair, it was a nice ego boost to see all of the things and to see the connections and everything. It wasn't super useful to me in getting stuff back out. So I was having Readwise, sweeping my my annotations from Hypothesis or from Kindle into there, and then actually that was creating a big bottleneck because I wasn't processing them fast enough. And so from a workflow perspective, that was a little bit frustrating. And then also when it came time for me to adapt and expand this writing guide into that my father initially had written for the University of California, into a note-making and writing booklet, which actually turned into this. So I did manage to do it, but as I was working on this, it was very frustrating trying to get the information out. So what I started doing is I started writing on note cards, and
going back to
basics, going back to something where I could put them down and arrange them and move them and experiment with them that way. And then, of course, I discovered Scott Shepper was kind of advocating for a similar thing in his AntiNet, which I like. I don't do it exactly the same way that he does it, but the whole Zettelkasten thing kind of interests me. And then just that whole idea that my goal is really to turn as quickly as possible, and that's the main thing that I kind of talk about in here for students is as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible and as thoughtfully as possible, how to teach them to turn other people's ideas into their own. And and especially right now, higher ed is really nervous about ChatGPT and how that's going to affect the way that people assess work and assess understanding in college and university classes. And I think that so far I'm not that worried, because I think that sort of thoughtful and focused writing is still, I think, fairly easy to recognize. So sure. I'm hopeful that we can kind of stay ahead of the curve by just being more sort of diligent about having sort of original, meaningful things to say, rather than just something that kind of pulls together all the things that have already been said and sounds and sounds like the syntax is right.
So if I understood correctly, you decided to try Scrintal because you needed to go back kind of like to the basics and be able to write down your own ideas, like to go to a place where you could put all your thoughts or your ideas or notes from other books that you're reading, for instance, quickly without having to go through tutorials or learn how to use like the tool.
I watched a couple of entry tutorials, and it seemed very intuitive, and I thought, the visual metaphor really works for me of having having a board where I can arrange things, because that was the type of thing that I had been doing in Tinderbox. But this also gave me a little bit more structure, where the links are, the links were easy to for me to make. It was it seemed very very intuitive. And the other thing that really attracted me was this ability to publish out a board, so that my students could see it as a website and actually interact with it, and and look at the notes themselves, move them around, arrange them, in ways that that work for them, and then it wouldn't necessarily be destructive of the thing that I
and you wouldn't have to put an extra work like creating, let's say, a website or some kind of presentation for them, because that will be the same cards that you will probably prepare for your classes.
Yes, exactly. And I one of the other things I do with my time is I write open textbooks, and typically I use Pressbooks for that. But which I love, but Pressbooks creates an ebook, which is basically a long scroll that that you kind of read through in a linear sort of fashion, and there can be links, but it doesn't sort of excel at linking. And so I've been, and actually that was actually one of the things that I liked about the work that Mark Bernstein was doing with not only Tinderbox but Storyscape, was that he had this idea that HTML was going to enable some type of non-linear narrative, which I'm kind of interested in, and also sort of self-directed navigation and learning experience. And so that so I think there's in history we're sort of acutely aware of the artificiality of kind of these stories that we tell, right? That we sort of impose narrative structure on them, and all of these tropes and metaphors and kind of structural components, because that's the way we understand things. But that's not necessarily the best way to understand, a contingent set of events, with agency, coming from different places and all that. So it's a way to kind of explore that as well.
All right, but I think now you can show me.
Now I will show you
all this intro how you have been using Scrintal. I believe you have something there to show me. Perhaps
I have This is, are you seeing my board?
Yes, can you make it full screen?
This is, I'll make this full screen. And and so what this is actually is, this is my I'm working on a primary source project with my US history students. So all of the things, so what I've done is I have sort of separated all of these things into all these primary sources, right? So, the saga of Leif Erikson from and the discovery, or that actually Vinland existed. So I've got so this actually is a primary source from the saga of Eric the Red, and the students, my students read this, and there are some links to you'll notice there are some links to other things. And so and this always takes a moment when I'm going from full screen.
Actually, what you could do also is start from. Can you make a right click? So we start from by showing all the cards that you have on this board, perhaps. I think there, fit all to screen. There you go. Because if this is if this board is like the one that you showed me some time ago, it was massive. It was like
Yes.
Huge. And it's like a timeline, right?
Yeah. So this is, let me put the whole thing here. So this is a timeline. And what I've done is I've got about 200 primary sources for the first section of, what happened there, of US history. And what they do is so they're chronological, and all of those actual sources are below the timeline. And then what I'm doing is I'm creating up top some additional people, places, things, sort of almost like a wiki, right? Where if somebody is looking at, and I'm linking them so that some of them are more linked. I think this one is.
Yeah, you can zoom in perhaps if you are using. Oh, you're using a mouse, or you can also hold space, or there you go, like to zoom in. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I've done is I've taken all of these. So I've taken a bunch of primary sources, and from a variety of different anthologies, and I have, and this is still a work in progress. So you can see there are a bunch of empty nodes up here that I haven't filled in yet. This semester, as I teach this again, I'll be adding all of that stuff in. So what's happening here, is that I have all of these different sources, and then I'll be linking them to to people and places and things and events, and that will hopefully give students a better understanding of how these things are connected, how especially how perspectives go, right? Because over here I have Jefferson's opinion of Hamilton, Hamilton's opinion of Jefferson, and then other people commenting on their conflict and things like that. So so this is one of the things that I've been able to sort of take and explode the time. There's a small timeline that's available in Pressbooks, but it doesn't really allow linking. And the beauty of what I'm able to do here is that I can put a small description of somebody and an image in. It will link to other things that that are also kind of relevant, and and students should be able, as they're researching a particular event or a particular person, they should be able to kind of make their way through that information, kind of go from one thing to the next in a way that is not necessarily going to be the way that I narrate it in my lectures or that sort of thing. So that's one of the things that I'm doing. Another thing that I'm doing for my own self is that I am actually also I've taken this idea of the note cards, and I have just taken pictures of note cards. And so I've photographed all of these note cards. I've got my own numbering scheme. And then what I've done is I've sort of connected them. And I'm thinking about this as a forest. I'm actually thinking about this as an aspen forest, because apparently the largest living thing on Earth is this aspen grove in Utah. It's the largest and oldest possibly thing on the planet, a living thing on the planet, because it's called Pando, and it's this colonial colony of aspens. So I'm thinking of this as my data here sort of as kind of a forest. So the roots are the observations that I make about sources, right? So each one of them will have and this is really just sort of the beginning of kind of work in progress. So there's not a lot. I haven't gotten a lot in here, but
I love that. I love the use that you have given to the pretext to create this kind of like surface, and then you have the roots under. I believe, if I understood correctly, like the roots under, and then these other notes above this surface.
Right, and then my ideas about these things that I've sort of collected from sources will go above, and there'll be the trunk and branches and leaves of
love
these.
It. I love it. I haven't seen anybody at least using it this way, using Scrintal or a board for like organizing the notes this way. So that's very, very interesting.
I think I think it gives me, well, and the thing about, the thing about having cards is I have a big card catalog in my home office, but I have a little box here that that I can carry notes to and from, right? And I can make notes and bring them back and forth, but I don't have the whole thing, right? So I can't go in and I can't, if I'm here at work, I can't search on an idea that I want to. Like today, I've got an economic history course, and I want to talk about the beginning of private property and corporations in America. And there's a very peculiar legal case about a bridge monopoly that I want to kind of review the notes. And I know that I've written about it before. It's in a chapter of my environmental history textbook that I've written, but I want to put that together. So I have it in, not in this board yet, but I have it in my main, my main thing where I can actually go and find those boards, find the images that are associated with them, which I think images are super important for especially communicating historical ideas with the general public. Scholars, can read articles and, in journals and things like that and sort of get what they need out of them, because they've sort of got that extra level of interest that allows them to sort of push through sort of the dryness of a lot of academic writing. But to communicate with people who are not going to be historians, even if they're just going to be, we serve a lot of people who are going to be social studies teachers here on this campus, but also, just people who are coming here for a different kind of degree, who are taking, one of my history surveys to meet core requirements in the humanities. And so I want them, I want to sort of sell my product to them and attract them to it and interest them in it, so that it's not just a chore, but also I want to sort of make what has happened in history sort of relevant to the world that we're living in today and the questions that they have, that they're going to have, trying to figure out how to be active in the world today. And if history is a set of choices made in the past, then they have some type of connection to the choices that we're going to make in the present and the future. So.
Especially I'm thinking of the board that you showed me before, the history board, especially for younger students, probably the ones attending to your classes, is like quite difficult to connect with all these characters, let's say from all these figures from I don't know, the 17 or the 1800s. So having images, having an understanding of which figures or which characters were contemporary, I believe is the word, but they lived around the same time with other characters, and having an understanding of that through images, through drawings or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And for example, this woman is she's the daughter of a Southern planter, and she writes a kind of a diary that we have access to. And so, so rather than just having them read these things and not really kind of being able to sort of fit a face to the name, I think this is, I do think this is very helpful. One of the other things that I would like to do that I haven't tried to do yet in Scrintal, because I don't want to crush the database, is I actually read all of these things. And so I have I actually have a podcast of me sort of narrating all of these primary sources. And so I think what I'll do, rather than, try to add the MP3 files to each of these, 200 or 250 things, is I'll just attach the URL of the podcast episode, and then they can just have it open in another window.
Yeah, that's true. Or perhaps have another board with all the files. I'm thinking have a board with all your episodes. Could be another idea I'm thinking. But can you let me know? Well, this one probably requires some kind of planning before you created this board. but which one was the process? Did you start it from one single card, and then from there you started to adding all these notes or these cards, or how did it go?
Well, this one I was sort of simultaneously creating the ebook. So I had identified a bunch of sources, and actually last semester, each week I was going through and I was transcribing the dozen or 24 sources that I was going to use with the students that week, and they were going into the ebook, and then simultaneously they were going in here. And actually, right now I'm editing them again because I really didn't do as much as I might have done to kind of edit them, especially these ones from the 17th century. The language, even even when they were written in English, which not all of them were, the language is atrocious.
Yeah.
And so I have to kind of edit them for readability as well. And so I've been going through and doing that. I've been editing them down to about 1,500 words each, so that there aren't these long passages that drive undergraduates to kind of despair. So I've been doing all of that, and so that did. There was it wasn't as organic as what you're saying, where I'm having thoughts and I'm thinking. The other board where when I'm reading, I'm making a bunch of notes, and then I'm making a bunch of handwritten notes, and then I'm shooting pictures of them and processing them and thinking about them and making connections and stuff. That's more organic. And I think those trees will grow, and hopefully those will have, ultimately there will be a lot of connections between these sources. When I'm up here, in the branches and leaves thinking about these things, I'll be able to connect from one to another, right? Where I see, and that's where I think the power, and of course that's what everybody hopes for, and that's what everybody believes that, that Niklas Luhmann found with the Zettelkasten, right? Was this way of sort of connecting disparate ideas in an interdisciplinary way, that created new insights. So I think that this and the combination, and I think that the value for me of this is that this is a very sort of accurate metaphor of this process. Where I still love Obsidian. I still let Readwise sweep my notes in there, but I see that more of as a kind of as a staging place, not where I'm having kind of my final insights and developing the things that are going to go into my output. So I think that this is going to be much more sort of directly and immediately applicable to that, in a way that that the other was sort of always over the horizon in a so I think that this is I think that this has been, and then actually just in the last not the very last update, but the last couple of updates, you've actually also made the export process much more, this publishing process much more visible and sort of accessible, so that I don't hit the button and then wonder what's happened. I know exactly when the last update was, and I can kind of keep track of that. So that has definitely enhanced the experience.
That's good to hear. And I was going to ask if you have to give any tip on how to use a Scrintal, or how new users can take their notes. What can you tell them?
Well, I think that one of the things, one of my favorite things for kind of taking new notes is this.
Okay.
Just the whole daily, the daily card thing, and just sort of keeping daily. I like the idea of journaling. I like the idea of sort of putting my thoughts down. I don't have a kind of a regular morning notes practice in the very formal way that other people do, but I do like to have to put these things down, and then I can link them to to whatever they need to link to. So that is I think a really interesting and valuable way to sort of get started and sort of get start to get one's thoughts together and then see where your interest leads you. I think that's one of the things that I like about sort of the organic nature of working on cards and on working of the way that I'm at least trying to work in Scrintal is that it is, that I don't have to kind of create top-down categories and say, okay, now this idea goes in this, in this bin or in this silo. And we're already, in academia, we're already way too siloed. So I think that having this ability to, to just, and I've been doing it mostly so far with cards. I haven't been using tags as much. So that's something I still, really will continue to sort of ponder. And I do tag these things as daily notes. So I have another card. I have another board somewhere that's just all my. Where is it? Yeah, that's all my daily notes. And then I think I have some other tags. I've created like a to do and a done tag so that I could go back through and find all the all the things that I've set for myself.
And how would you describe the system that you set or follow in a Scrintal? You mentioned, okay, you create your notes perhaps on desk, and then let's say if this note that you create on your desk is just a random thought or idea that you haven't decided to include in any of your boards, how is the process? Do you leave it there, or once you develop the idea, you create a board? How does it go?
Actually, that's a good question. One of the things that I do from time to time is I just take a picture of my board. So, if I'm working on something and I haven't really got it organized yet, and I think this one, what was I working on? Oh, I was working on a bunch of potential sources for primary sources in the second half of the U.S. History survey. So, so I just, I made cards. I took a snapshot of it, so I have that. And I think that one of the things, one of my takeaways, sort of from my understanding of the Zettelkasten system, is that it's important to figure out how your new idea connects to something, right? Not necessarily the ultimate thing that it will be that it'll be connected to in the long run, but there is sort of a discipline involved in kind of figuring out where something goes and how something relates to what you're already working on. And so that I'm trying to sort of build in that little piece of intentionality as well, that that when I make a card, I can think about, why, what is this? What's it for? So I can add a tag that says, this is going on the U.S. history timeline or whatever it's going to be.
I understand. So, and last question before, like asking something about the future of the Scrintal. Yeah, I would like to know, now that you are showing your screen, which one would be your favorite feature, or perhaps the one that you use the most here in Scrintal?
So far, in terms of the time that I've put into it, it's been this U.S. history project, because I think that this has helped me also to sort of clarify what I'm doing and the connections between things. I have it's kind of interesting. I'm using this with a first year survey class this semester, but I'm also having about a half a dozen seniors, history majors, actually kind of go through this with me and develop sort of almost in I guess what I'm thinking of as an introduction to what a graduate seminar might look like for them, having them think about, what these things mean and how to connect them and what themes are. One of the things right here, one of the things that I noticed as I was doing this, and because I did this, was I have a huge gap here between 1700 and 1740. I have no sources, and that was
nothing happened.
Yeah, well, and things, and so I did actually. I went out and I found a dozen sources that I'll be adding in, and it is a moment when, there isn't really anything happening. There's no war. There's nothing. So there's nothing major like that. But there are a lot of, in this period. Actually, I think what I'll use this for is there are a lot of Europeans who come to North America and write about it. Sort of in the same way that, that famous people later, like Crevecoeur and whatnot, write these observations of, or was it in Tocqueville, Democracy in America, right? That's much later. That's 100 years later. But at this moment, also in the beginning of the 18th century, there are people coming and they're having experiences and they're observing. And so I think that's what I'll devote this. I have about a dozen sources that I'm gonna put in here. So that actually was a huge immediate benefit to me, was that I was, because it's visual, I was able to kind of see that, oh, wait a minute, I need to, I need to add something there. And also, I'll need up here in the descriptive parts, right, in the wiki, right, I'll need to put some explanatory things along the way, right? So I have to kind of fill this in as well, so that the students can interact, or ideally, where many historians are sort of romantics, and we think that if we just tell this story right, it's going to interest people, right, and people are going to see it and understand it in a new way, and sort of break out of, perhaps master narratives where, we've been told that these are the things that are important in American history or world history or whatever, and kind of make it more, sort of more attractive and more, and a little bit more interactive. And I think that's the thing that has been the most attractive to me thing about Scrintal yet, is this potential interactivity with readers, because one of the things that I really like is the idea of kind of working with the garage door open, right? So that even though this is a work in progress, it's still out there, and people can and people can interact with it. People can respond to it. People can ideally get in contact with me and give me give me feedback and suggestions. So.
And I can see that in this board you use many of our features, and this is why it's making it quite visual and appealing. Well, obviously you created this board and you also publish it. You are using different images. I'm not sure if you're using videos inside those cards or not. You're using color. You're using the links. You're using the free text, and I'm sure that you're using certain tags, which will help you, filter all these cards. For instance, if you haven't done it, let's imagine you using, I don't know, like a 1700 tag, and then over there I can, if I search for that tag, and filter all the cards with that tag, then I will find the main characters or the main figures in those times, or the main events that happen. So really nice.
or I mean, there will be. And I haven't entirely resolved this in my head, whether everything will link, for like a theme like slavery, for example, in early in colonial and early America, whether that is something that I'll best be able to deal with tags, or with a link to, because right now I have a card about slavery and everything links to it, but that's where all of these lines are going, actually, I think, so all of this is sort of linking to this one. Whoop, there it goes. I went by too fast. To that one card about slavery, and I'm not sure that is the most. So this is still work in progress. So this is a card about slaves. and it does, it does have the benefit of having, all of these backlinks and
But this is our learning process, so it's great because perhaps it might be the case that tagging at this point it might not be a good idea for you for this project. So perhaps for you it's better if you wait until the end and then decide how to tag these cards as a way of grouping them and then filtering them which will be good for you or for your students too.
Right. Yeah. And the beauty of this is that it's all right there. So I don't, I can change, I have, it's kind of funny. I have altered my numbering scheme a couple of times. And that is, at first I was worried about that, but it's entirely possible as long as you don't, nothing really, in this type of a system, nothing really ever gets thrown away. So it's just a question of how you, how you can sort of continue to deal with it and link to it. Yeah, I'm really excited about kind of seeing this continue to develop. I have actually tried to steer clear of adding too much multimedia onto a card, just because I don't, because I'm sort of wary of overloading, the board at this point. But in the future, I might do that. If it is, if it's something that I can, the other option, of course, is linking to, to data that I host. So if I'm making, videos, or if I'm making these little audio clips and I can, they can live on your servers, or they can live on a podcast server somewhere, whichever, and the beauty of what you've got here with with the links is that I can link inside the board, or I can link outside the board just as easily.
Yeah, that's right. All right, but the last question will be, what are you excited about the most regarding what's coming in the Scrintal? Is there anything that excites you about?
I think that one of the things that I've been most pleased about. Should I stop? I'll stop sharing now.
Yes, you can stop sharing.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been the most pleased about with Scrintal is that you guys have really sort of stuck to your knitting and kind of focused on what your vision, even though the vision has been evolving, right? Focusing on the vision and sort of enabling that, rather than reacting to every little
request,
every feature request that comes down. And one of the things that I guess I'll put this in a comparison. One of the things that frustrated me a little bit about other apps like Obsidian is that there is this thriving sort of developer community making plugins and doing all of these things, but I'm not there to optimize my app with a particular set of plugins and to be trying and to try new things and customize
and getting used to them
in a particular way, with and have a whole CSS and I don't want. I mean, years ago, I did that kind of thing. Right? Years ago, when I was in high tech, I knew how to code a little bit, and now I'm not really interested in that. I'm really kind of more interested in focusing on my content and having, and so that's been the beauty for me of what Scrintal is doing, is you're taking care of all of that in a way that I think is well articulated and that I understand. And so honestly, I'm usually very wary of products in alpha, and afraid to put too much trust in them and to rely on them too much. I have not felt that way with Scrintal because the path seems to be so kind of clear and well articulated, and and also well communicated. I think that you've all been doing a really good job of of being responsive on Slack to, to what people are the questions that people are asking, and the feature requests and all of that as well. And so I think that is, I think that this community, the biggest thing for me, the thing that I'm most excited about is kind of this community that you've created of people who, seem to be very competent and passionate and focused on this thing. And I find that really attractive.
No, thank you very much, Dan. And yeah, we're really excited also about the things that are coming. And we're always working on giving the best service and the best, communicating the best way we can with our users and the community members. So thank you very much for your words. And thank you very much also for sharing a little bit of your Scrintal world with us and letting us know how you have been using it, how others can make use of this tool that we all are learning actually how to use, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Thank you very much, Dan. And I'll be adding your social media handles in our description, but can you let us know where people can follow you perhaps, or where they can find you?
Yeah, I have a blog that I am actually contributing to sort of on a daily basis now on Substack. That is just Dan Allosso, my name, DANALLOSSO. I have a YouTube channel called Making History, and actually, if you would, if you want, you can publish that that URL to the board, to the primary source board, just so that kind of people can see it. And as I said, it's a work in progress, so they'll see it kind of continuing to develop.
That's great. We'll add those links to the description too, so people can find it.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Alan, and I will let you enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good talking.
Thank you.